With all the rhetoric that's been going on this year with alleged fake news, there's two things I find interesting I think would be worth talking about. And they're once again surfacing with all this situation that has developed in Syria regarding the chemical attack in Idlib province and Trump's response to that. Firstly, before I continue with that, I just want to touch on another thing I forgot to mention in my previous video regarding why Assad would commit the attack in Idlib. That's what the last video was focused on. I mentioned that there is a track record of collective punishment, but another important fact is that because Trump's rhetoric for so long has been about supposedly downplaying Assad or seeing a situation where Assad wasn't the biggest threat, it could well be that Assad got complacent. That is yet another reason why it is quite plausible. Also, apparently, after the 2013 Ghouta attack, when Syria's chemical stockpiles were confiscated, there were reports that a sarin stockpile was unaccounted for. Now, this chemical, according to Turkish observers, that was used in the province was sarin, so that adds up. Of course, when it comes to a very bloody and complex war zone, it's difficult to say anything for absolute certain, except the only thing that's certain is those who are suffering. The only certainty really in a war zone is those people who are choking and feeling the pain from the violence and brutality. Anyway, I want to touch on two things that I notice a lot online. It's particularly online. You don't see this on broadcast news, although you might well see it on RT, which likes to promote conspiracy theories. I've positioned my views on conspiracy theories not so long ago, and summed up. I'm not absolutely skeptical. I think it's healthy to ask questions, but I also believe that conspiracy theories are often driven by ideological grounds. Now, there's two strategies that are being used by people who want to question Western positions in particular on geopolitical situations. And I'll deal with them individually to try and make things simple. One of them is by producing videos that usually start with big, dominant, attention grabbing headlines like the truth about Syria, what the West won't tell you, and these sort of sensationalistic headlines. Now, a good example of this was the Canadian journalist Eva Bartlett. Um, Everyone who has a pro Assad agenda in this situation is hailing her to be a messiah of truth. So forget all the doctors, forget all the aid workers, forget all the journalists who are in Syria. Eva Bartlett knows everything. You know, she's God. She knows everything. That is the attitude that her supporters seem to have, that she somehow knows things that everyone else doesn't know. My question is, well, firstly, there's a very important aspect about this. She is constantly presented as an independent journalist. This is a very important thing because by presenting her as independent, that indicates she's not biased and therefore a good source. The problem is, Eva Bartlett is not independent by definition. How the hell can she be independent when she has vocally supported the Assad regime? This is nonsensical, and only a complete idiot would argue that. Whatever your views on the Syrian war, to try and suggest that Eva Bartlett is independent is utterly absurd. Even if you agree with her, at least acknowledge she's not independent. So I think her proponents shoot themselves in the foot with that one. she's a prominent example, but there are many others. You see this all the time. The truth about this, the truth about that. I'm not saying that those videos are entirely wrong, but when you have such a sensationalist opening, you cannot, critical thinking makes you wonder, well, is there not an agenda here? Are they, they'll attack mainstream media, but surely they're just pushing an agenda as well. It's kind of become a fad to attack mainstream media. It's kind of the trendy thing to do. If you want to be seen as a bit radical, as a bit smart. I've been pretty critical of mainstream media. If we use that term, let's say if it refers to the BBC, CNN. Um, but here's the thing: who gets to define mainstream media? I've made this point before. Russia today is mainstream media among conspiracy theorists, at least those with a very anti-Western outlook. Um, Fox News is mainstream media to American conservatives, although they won't admit it. But I think that's a very contentious term myself, because who gets to define it? That's why I don't say mainstream media. I certainly think there could be criticism of big networks, and certainly there is corporate issues there, goodness knows. I mean, the influence tycoons like Rupert Murdoch have is vast. Of course it is. But the only reason I take issue with the term mainstream media is because it's a contentious term. Who gets to define what is mainstream media? That's why I don't. Now, the second issue I take is something I've touched on before, but again, something that's been noticeable: the politicization of soldiers or military personnel. And again, it usually comes into the format of the online community. Not always. You get it on RT, you get it on those networks that are hell bent on making Western governments look evil and wicked and all the rest of it. And it usually will be an ex Marine or an ex soldier. Um, Not often a current serving soldier, because obviously they would lose their position. But it's usually an ex Marine or an ex soldier, often with combat experience, and they will have very strong views that are ideological. And there's a big focus on the fact that they have served, that they are military personnel, because it's kind of saying, oh, look, this was one of these people who served for this government, and they're saying this, so it must be true. But there's a big catch with this, and it's something that no one seems to notice, or no one seems to. I shouldn't say no one, probably other people have noticed it, but it's this idea or this insinuation or assumption that because one soldier is critical of, say, I don't know, the American government or the British government, then somehow they represent all soldiers. For every soldier or every Marine who speaks to RT and tells the truth about Syria, there's going to be many others who disagree with him or her. So, as far as I'm concerned, the profession is being used as a tool. It's irrelevant. They may have had experience, and it's experience I respect. They've served their country, I respect that. But soldiers are as capable of having opinions as anyone else. And, the fact they've been brave doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean that they're ideologically right about something. Just like Eva Bartlett, they don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. I don't care what experience you have. You cannot claim that you know everything about a situation. What you can say is you claim your own experience, your experience of a situation. But I'm sorry, no low level or even slightly higher level, officer level military personnel can claim that they know the absolute inner workings of government. That's nonsensical. How would they be privy to that information? So the only experience they have is what they have experienced, either in the field or from talking to fellow troops. But again, I believe it's negative experience clouds judgment. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm not saying they're right. I'm just saying it's wrong to say And again, it's sensationalized. It's like Marine tells the truth. My immediate thought is, okay, so he's a Marine. What does that prove? And the problem is, it's difficult to say that because then you're seen as, oh, you cannot criticize someone in uniform. That's bullshit. I'm sorry, but it is. In societies where freedom of expression is deeply valued, nobody is above scrutiny. Nobody. And if you think I am being disrespectful, so consider this. This might sound like I'm going off on a tangent, but it's just to make a point. During the IRA's mainland campaign in Great Britain, there was actually one incident, and I was doing research on this recently. The second Harrods bombing, not the first Harrods bombing, the second Harrods bombing, which thankfully wasn't as bad, no one died, but apparently the perpetrators of that were far left ex soldiers. So, this idea that because someone has served, they're not capable of being biased or they're not capable of being ideologically, on one side and driven by ideology as opposed to facts is nonsense. Soldiers are as capable of being as opinionated as anyone else, and they're as diverse as anyone else. There are left wing soldiers and there's right wing soldiers. I know because I've met both in my life. So I'm getting a bit tired of the politicization of military personnel. You can find many examples of soldiers who become very left wing and very outspoken against government's military policies. You also get examples of soldiers who turn the other direction and become like really endorse the populist right, in some cases joining far right organizations. So I just don't accept the argument that because someone's been a soldier, they somehow know everything. I respect the service they've went through. I respect the fact that they have served their country, but that doesn't mean that they know everything. It just doesn't. So those are two things I would ask people to think about. Number one, just because a video says in big bold letters the truth about doesn't mean it is the truth. And secondly, just because someone has worn a uniform doesn't mean they know everything, because no one knows everything. I sure as hell don't know everything. Um, and I don't claim I do. That's actually why I have no videos, or at least very, very few videos, where I'm saying the truth about. Because I don't want to shoot myself in the foot by then finding out at a later date that I was dead wrong. And incidentally, if I am absolutely proved to be dead wrong in a particular video, I'm prepared to say that I was wrong. Because for me, ego isn't the thing. It's about truth, or at least trying to ascertain truth. I don't think we can ever know the full truth. But anyway, those are 2 points for people to think about, and I would urge people to think about them. And I'm tired of people pandering, this online. And the final word, anyone who questions it, there's a cult like mentality around this. That's the other issue. I'll round up with this, but it is important. There is a cult like attitude that if you question it, I've been called a puppet of the neocons. I've been called, a lover of the corporate media. I've been called all sorts of things simply because I questioned their narrative. But this is a cult like mentality where people just slavishly believe it because they're rebelling against the mainstream media. That's as close minded as people who blindly believe, everything that is said on Fox or CNN or the BBC or whatever. Thank you for watching. Think critically. That's all.